All right, good morning, everyone. My name is Raven Sweeney. I'm a senior music performance major here at Quincy University. Today, I'll be talking about practical strategies for teaching music in multilingual classrooms. So while you look at the table of contents, I will talk about why I decided to choose this topic. So for those of you that don't know, I'm from Beardstown, Illinois, and Beardstown is a very diverse town. And when I mean diverse, I mean 40% of the population is of Hispanic or Latino ethnicity, about a little over 10% is of other ethnicities, and the rest is white. So because of that, I was placed into dual language classes, and so from the grades of kindergarten to 5th grade, I was taught some subjects in Spanish and some subjects in English, which is very uncommon in this area. But yeah, so I knew from firsthand experience how classrooms like this worked, and because I was a student in it, and I knew some of the faulties in it because I spoke fluent English and fluent Spanish. So I went to an Illinois Music Educators Conference this year, and I went to a clinic where she talked about teaching music in multilingual classrooms. So I enjoyed everything she said, but she'd had no experience with, she had no experience with this, so she was telling her why she was surprised and how she dealt with it. So I thought, okay, I like this topic. I would like to talk about it with someone who has been with this in these kind of subjects with this experience. So I will start with our student profiles. Some questions you can ask are, what languages are spoken at home, and what are their proficiency levels within music and the English language? This is sort of their pretest for themselves and for a pretest for yourself, so you know what you're getting into. And we have goals that we should want to set, and for those goals, you can ask yourself, how can we balance musical objectives and with the language goals? You can do this by using songs to highlight specific grammatical structures and vocabulary movements with words. I did this about 2 years ago. I took a class with Dr. Stewart, and I made a lesson plan where I incorporated solfege, so it's do, re, mi, and so on, and with the song from The Sound of Music, do, re, mi, and I incorporated sign language within that. So I started with do, a deer, and then female deer. That way I was incorporating language and hand gestures because they use these hand gestures to figure out what they're saying. And a lot of times when you find yourself speaking to someone who may not speak the same language as you, you're both using a lot of hand movements. Another thing we can do is differentiate by proficiency. So by creating tiered goals, a beginner might focus on vocabulary while an advanced learner focuses on the tone and the context of lyrics. And in the classroom logistics, see students who have different strengths and weaknesses. And what I mean by this is don't seat someone who speaks English and speaks Spanish together. Well, you can, but you should maybe have a student that doesn't really pay attention in class, or they're just kind of disruptive, and you can ask them, hey, can you help me and help your friend over here, and seat them with them. So then one student is learning and the other student's also learning, and in a way where they feel like they're helping them. For visual scaffolds, these are making abstract musical concepts and new technical vocab immediately comprehensible by breaking down language barriers. One way we can do this is by having accessible learning. This would be with our visuals bridge the gap between spoken language and musical concepts. They make abstract concepts like pitch, volume, and tempo tangible. A way you can do this is when we're talking about tempo, we can have our students walk in place, or the faster the tempo is, we have them run in place, obviously not around in the classroom. Another way we can do this is with volume. When we are discussing volume, of course, use the musical terms like piano and forte, but when you're explaining these, maybe whisper for piano and then yell for forte. It's giving them other visuals and giving them better examples so they can understand it. Increased engagement and confidence. Increasing engagement builds confidence because then students aren't scared to mess up in front of their peers. Later on in this presentation, I'll talk about call and response. So one way we could do this is if you start a song with the whole classroom, and then we break down into groups, so where when we have a call and response, you can have one student do it as like a solo. And, it makes them not as scared to talk in front of their peers, because then they're not going to mess up. For structural support, having a set and stone schedule is important in general. Not only is this important for English language learners, ELL students, but it's also important for everyone. We all have set in stone schedules that we like to do. We all have a routine. So it's important that we do that for our students as well. It helps students know what's going on, and because a lot of the times, especially for ELL students, they're always worried about what is happening next and making sure they're focusing on the instruction. By having a set in stone schedule, they already know what we're doing, and they can actually focus on the content of the lesson that we are teaching that day. For the vocabulary development, having pictures everywhere in the classroom with musical concepts help build musical terminology as they grow older. You can have pictures of, like I said earlier, we are using terminology like piano and forte. We can have like a student, there's a picture of a student with this underneath the piano. We can have a picture of a student underneath forte, yelling. They can visibly see that they're yelling. And then, tempo, we can have a picture of a student walking or running. Just having different kinds of pictures underneath the terminology helps them as well. For the reduced cognitive load, by explaining a clear and simple visual representation, it helps students focus on the content than trying to understand the instruction. So try not to make everything too wordy and just give an example. So do everything one by one. So if I were to if I wanted these students to dance along with the song, you'd say, okay, let's stand up, you stand up with them. Okay, let's walk to the door, then you walk to the door with them. By giving it to them one by one, it helps reduce the cognitive load because our brains can only handle so much at a time. For our total physical response, this is connecting movements with sound, enabling instant comprehension of musical concepts and lyrics without needing any language training. So we can use songs to remember things. So how we use, the states and capitals songs, or how we use our ABCs to learn our ABCs. That's kind of what this is. And you don't need to know the language to teach through movement. So this is mainly used when you're first starting to get to know your students. Because you don't know this is the first day of school. You don't know what you're walking into yet. No one does. So that is a good way to start the class and start the school year off with. For our call and response, these are short phrases repeated by teacher and then students to build pronunciation and confidence. This was underneath the Accessible Learning for All, like I stated earlier, and it helps with the active listening and retention. So we all know if the teacher goes, and then you guys clap back, it's the same thing. Now, if you were to do that with words, let's say we had a stuffed animal, let's say we have multiple stuffed animals, we have a duck, a lizard, and such and so on. You give them to some students, and they would be like, I have the lizard, you have the lizard, they say I have the lizard. They are learning the language, and by giving them an example of how it's supposed to sound and how it is pronounced, then they learn there through actively doing it. For chunking and simplified language, chunking is taking large sums of information and breaking it down. So it improves working memory. The brain can only, like I said earlier, can only handle a limited amount of information. Chunking helps bypass this and makes it easier to remember. It helps facilitate muscle memory, and at least for all musicians, especially instrumentalists, breaking down music into small, manageable chunks aid in developing music or muscle memory, which is crucial for performances. It's also like riding a bike or driving. You learn how to do it first, and then once you've done it a couple times, then it's your muscle memory taking over. Chunking this information, let's say we run through a piece of music, whether it's vocal or instrumental, and you're like, okay, that wasn't great, so let's do the first two measures. You're chunking that information, and you do it one by one, and then you put it together for a better end result. It also leverages transferable skills. So teachers can use cognates. These are words that sound similar in two languages. So tiempo in Spanish means like time, and tempo in well, music language. It is, how fast a piece may be going, the speed of it. So this helps the students make connections. I know when people, like my professors, ask, what does con fuego mean? And I'm like, that means with fire, because it's so similar to Spanish. Kids will keep doing that when they get older and the farther they are in their music. For culturally responsive repertoire, we should be including songs from students' homes, languages, and invite families to share songs. It helps boost engagement and identity. So ask students what songs they like to sing with their siblings or families at home. Some songs get shared at recess. I know when I was younger, we were always singing at recess. We all know the bubblegum in a dish. Well, we would also be like, how do you say it in this language? So by doing that, you have involvement within the classroom, and we're all learning something new. We're all learning different languages. And you could even do this by, making a concert out of it. It's as simple as that, especially if you're in a school that may not have many resources. This is a good way to, not spend money on music, and it just helps get the community involved. Common mistakes that happen. So relying solely on verbal instruction. Over-explaining musical concepts verbally instead of demonstrating through modeling, gestures, and visuals. Kind of what I'm doing right now, except I got a slideshow back here. But I think you guys are able to pick up what I'm saying. So kids and, any student that you're teaching, they cannot grasp the understanding of what you're saying just through words. Especially younger students, they need a picture with the word. They can't, especially if, they don't speak the same language as you, the word probably doesn't make sense. They need a picture with it. That's why we need visuals. That's why we need pictures. That's why we need to do movements with our bodies. Another mistake that is commonly made is assuming music is non-linguistic, thinking that because music is universal, English language learner students don't need language support. Music education still requires scaffolding to understand concepts, vocabulary, and instructions. And then the next one, and ignoring the silent period. So misinterpreting silence as lack of understanding or engagement. This is a natural and active listening phase, and a lot of the times if you force them to speak too early, then they're not gonna wanna speak. They're gonna be scared to speak, and they're just not gonna wanna learn another language. So by just waiting and listening, and just ask them, do you need help? Do you mean this maybe? Just give them a second, because at least for myself and some of my friends back home, we say, wait, don't tell me yet. And that's just out of habit, because people like to rush, and they like to, obviously they want to figure out what you're saying, but give them a second to think. They need that second to think. So then our next one is implicit bias. This is a very important one. So I looked it up on Google so I can give you guys a direct definition, and it's automatic, involuntary attitudes or stereotypes that influence understanding, actions, and decisions in an unconscious manner. So people don't really, they're unaware that they hold these biases. So for me, I am Dominican and my cousin is Mexican. And the stereotypes is Dominicans play baseball and Mexicans play soccer. When I was at my cousin's graduation, her dad's like, hey, so how's softball going? He just assuming that I played softball because I'm Dominican. I was like, I play soccer. And he was like, that Mexicans play soccer. So having those implicit biases really clouds your judgment when teaching, so don't assume. And this also includes instrumental stereotypes and vocal stereotypes. Not all women can sing soprano and alto. Not all men can sing, the lower tenor and baritone and bass parts. My friend Catherine can sing tenor parts, and our friend Leo, who's in the QU choir, can sing the alto part. This also includes women and men can play clarinet. Men don't just have to play brass instruments or percussion. It sounds crazy, but it's a real stereotype that happens within the music world. So just because someone comes up to you and says like, hey, I want to join band, don't be like, oh, you're a guy, so let's do brass or let's do percussion. Let them try them all out. So yeah, that's pretty much the end of my presentation. I will say not only was all of this information useful for multilingual learners, but it's important for English speakers as well. These are all things that you should do when you're teaching just students in your everyday class. Don't treat them like they're any different than the other students.